Not that I know of, this is Ashley's meeting. So.
Touche. Mr. Schmidt will probably, wants to speak.
Yes, ma'am. Just call me staff. What do you need?
Ready, we're going to go into executive session tonight. Talk about personnel. Okay.
All trim and tight. I look like I found everything you have. So what you're saying is if I need to drop these clothes down and turn them around, I need to drop them. Well, you're looking good. I'm glad you're recovering. That's going well.
I have been going. Just we must be missing each other.
It's kind of your rendezvous place.
Oh yeah.
Along with a whole bunch of other people.
You know, what they're looking for is some kind of cover to be able to do these things, statutory cover to be able to do these things. Instead of having to
No. Parents, and it doesn't, it's arbitrary. It needs to be standardized to me, this is but anyway, we tried to just play it low key and not get the clip.
Chris, what were you doing in Arkansas?
But it seems common sensey to me.
Chris, what's happening in Arkansas? Is that where you were?
Yeah, I went to Crystal Bridge to Alice Walton's. Alice Walton did a huge museum, park, and wellness center in Bentonville, and it was really cool.
I've never been there.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Yes. And you have lots of experience in various fields, but there's also other things.
And are we live?
Okay. Yes.
We might move that up the agenda. You could tell we're setting a good example. We'll talk about it maybe later.
Good evening. We're going to call our meeting to order. I'd like to welcome you to our council meeting this evening. If you have cell phones, we would like for you to please turn them off at this time. We will stand and have a pledge of allegiance by Councilmember Hodges and prayer by Councilmember Reed.
If you would like to pray with us, would you please remain standing? Dear God of us all, we thank you for this day, a day that you have made, a day that we shall all rejoice and be glad in. Thank you that you have allowed us to come down here one more time. We ask you, Lord, that you bless this agenda that is set before us as we begin to make decisions on behalf of the city of Madison. Amen.
Amen. All our council members are present tonight. Approve of minutes of our previous meetings. I hope you had a chance to read your work sessions of October the 1st, call work session of October the 4th, and our regular meeting of October the 11th. If you've had a chance to read those minutes, I would like to get a motion to approve those minutes.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. The minutes of the called work session, October 4th, are done. I got called out of the office unexpectedly, so I did not get those to y'all, so if we could add those to a future agenda, we can,
That
The other
October-
two, sorry.
How about the October the 4th and 11th?
oh, no, sir, you have the 1st and the 11th.
Okay,
Would
we
be-
get a motion to approve October the 1st and the 11th.
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
There no discussion. All in favor, show of hands.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I wasn't here on the first,
So you know, okay.
so I abstained or whatever on that one.
All in favor, opposed, none? The vote unanimously. We understand that it wasn't here for the work
Yeah,
session.
but it means, since I abstained, it means I voted with the majority, so it is good.
Thank you. Approval order of agenda item. We have with us tonight Ms. Andrea Gray. She is with Staten Springs. And I would like to move, we got a couple of public hearings tonight, and rather her to stay for this whole agenda tonight. I would like to move her up to maybe AA before we have our public hearing. If I get a motion to do that.
So moved.
Second.
Are there any more discussions? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none. Vote unanimously. There's nothing on our consent agenda, so Ms. Adrian from Staten Springs, you will come up and introduce yourself and tell us who you are.
Yes, please.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
I'm Andrea Gray. I'm the attorney for the Joint Development Authority of Jasper, Morgan, and Newton, Walton counties. Always a mouthful. Greatly appreciate you having me here this evening. What I'm here to talk to you about is an amendment to the Morgan County Service Delivery Strategy. And in addition to that, I come bearing some maps and pictures of everybody's eager to.
Ms. Gray, sorry to interrupt. Since we do have people online, do you mind using the microphone?
We're getting that.
Oh, there you go. Even better. Thank you. I'm sorry.
No problem. So I brought a little presentation to show you, and I've got some maps of our latest happenings out in Stanton Springs, and just want to give you an update. And again, our request, here we go. Our request is that Morgan County amend its service delivery strategy to appoint the Joint Development Authority as the service provider for these 10 services that I've listed here: building inspection, code enforcement, economic development, emergency medical services, fire protection, property tax assessment and collection, wastewater, water supply treatment and distribution, zoning administration, and zoning enforcement. Uniformity within Stanton Springs is a key to, one of the keys to why we've been so successful over these years. When you have developers come look at your property and they see that it's in 3 different counties, it's overwhelming to them. And so it's important that when we pitch these properties, we can show them that we have uniformity. We have uniformity of zoning. We have the Stanton Springs Business Park zoning designation. We have uniform tax collection and tax assessment through our revenue sharing agreement. Just this year, all 4 counties passed a development services intergovernmental agreement so that we have uniform services for that. We also have contracts with the Newton and Walton County economic development offices so that we have uniform representation on economic development. And then also in 2012, we amended service delivery strategies at that time to appoint the JDA as a water and sewer service provider. So you are not alone here. We are also going through this process. I'm out in Walton County working through their service delivery strategy and amending 9 of their services. And really what brought this to the forefront this year is that the authority just recently purchased 665 acres north of I-20 that we are calling Stanton Springs North. And that property is part in Morgan County, but also part in the city of Social Circle. So now, not only do we have 4 counties, we also have a city that's involved in the development. So here's the map. This is what you really want to see, right? So this is what is currently Stanton Springs and Stanton Springs North. So you'll see on the map, everything south of I-20 is what we call Stanton Springs. It's roughly 1,600 acres. And at this point, we're nearly completely developed out. We had Takeda come, which was Baxter originally, in 2012, and that's about 161 acres. Facebook came in 2018, and they took up about another 400 acres. Just this year, earlier this year, Bay Mayor came with another data center, and they're almost 600 acres. And so what's left is, in the peach color, what the Newton County Water and Sewer Authority is acquiring for their purposes. And on the far west side, the little green piece that says JDA, that's really all we have left for sale in Stanton Springs. We've got about 88 acres, which is, quite a long ways from where we started. But with that, the JDA this year reinvested money from the land sales that it's had the last couple years into purchasing the land to the north of I-20, the green parcel that's about 665 acres. And this is what we're developing as Stanton Springs North. And this is part, again, in Morgan County and part in the city limits of Social Circle. Also on this map, you'll see to the northwest corner is what is called Stanton Grove, and that's being developed by the Newton County Industrial Development Authority. So that's a completely separate development than what we're talking about for the Joint Development Authority. I've been working with Adam Mestris over at the county on updating your service delivery strategy maps, because in addition to forms we have to submit to DCA, we also need to submit maps showing the service areas. And so you can see this map covers a lot of services. Madison service area is shown in red. And you can just barely see where we've added in the JDA service area all the way to the western mid part of the county, just what looks tiny on this map, but it's the 1,600 acres that's Stanton Springs, and then the 665 acres, which is Stanton Springs North. And so this designation would allow the authority to be designated the service providers for all those listed on this map. Similarly, here's the water supply, treatment, and distribution map. Again, you can see the outline of your city limits in purple there in the center, and your service area shown in blue, which again, your service area doesn't quite reach out to Stanton Springs, and really neither does any other city or county within Morgan County. But the very tiny, again, western part is shown in yellow, and that's the JDA's water service area. So why are we doing this? Why is it important, other than uniformity, to have these services in the name of the Joint Development Authority? Well, that is because it's critical in our ability to get state grants, to get state loans, GFA loans, to qualify for those types of things, which are key for economic development purposes. And what we actually do is, because of JDA, we can't actually provide these services, right? We don't even have a single employee. So what we do is we contract with someone who can. So for example, we contract with the Newton County Water and Sewer Authority to provide water and sewer service to Stanton Springs. But that enables the Joint Development Authority to control who's being designated for these big projects, and allows us to better negotiate to bring them into Stanton Springs and Stanton Springs North. So for Madison's purposes, again, we've looked at the maps, and really, none of the services that we've listed that are changing are in your service area. But I know probably the reason you wanted me to come tonight is because you're part of the Tri-Cities Gas, which is a critical part, of developing the area out in Stanton Springs. And we know you've partnered and invested a lot with the two other cities for your gas service. And I will say the Joint Development Authority, prefers local providers, and the Tri-Cities is most certainly the preferred provider for Stanton Springs and Stanton Springs North. But you'll see in Walton County, we are asking to be appointed as the service delivery provider of gas, which would then allow us to contract with, say, Tri-Cities or whomever, likely Tri-Cities, to provide the services out in Stanton Springs. So really the SDS appointment is just one step, and then the second step is doing an intergovernmental agreement with the actual service providers as needed when we develop out the second half of our park. So with that, we've been working through the process. Again, Adam Mestris has been helping me along. Morgan County adopted this amendment last week, as did Boswick, and then it's on the agendas for Rutledge and Buckhead coming up. As part of this amendment, there are certain forms we have to turn in to DCA in addition to the resolution that's been put forth in your packet. And so, we would ask that Madison follow suit and adopt the resolution, and also sign Form 4 to allow us to submit the changes to DCA. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Corinne. I believe that all cities, all counties is asked to do this with the JDA. Is that right?
Well, right now we're working through Walton County, because we've already essentially built out Stanton Springs South. So Stanton Springs North only has Walton and Morgan County property. So that's why we're amending Walton County and Morgan County at this time.
Do you see that being the end of the expansion, or do you think that it will continue to expand, or is that 600 acres, you think, the last piece that, do you know?
I think it'll continue
To expand.
Yes.
And I think if I may, Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
I'm pretty sure I, somewhere in the 30-odd pages that I totally memorized it, not really. There was a mention of, as the Sand Springs does expand further, whatever agreements we set up now with this existing Sand Springs North applies to this kind of, to me, open-ended, whatever y'all grow out to. Am I
Right.
reading that right?
You are reading that right.
Does that not
but there
give
are-
anybody pause when you?
There are some limits here. So, again, here's the map, and the green to the north of I-20 is the 665 acres. As far as an expansion, we would only continue to expand east of 278. So we wouldn't be expanding to the west, which goes over back to Newton County. And I believe the outer limits to the east is Old Mill Road. And then north would be the CSX rail line. So, I don't see it as an infinite expansion, but maybe, I think maybe at most 2,000 acres is what's kind of in that boundary area.
I'm not implying it's bad that you might consider expansion, but it does seem kind of open-ended from my perspective. Let me ask you, when wasn't the agreement on the profit split that the 5 counties had originally, didn't that apply to the property south of I-20, and when they went to the north, did it involve a redo of the contract amongst the partners of the JDA to do a different type of revenue sharing split?
You're exactly right. We are in the process of amending the revenue sharing agreement. Originally included the 4 counties, and now we've added in Social Circle because the land north of I-20 is part in Social Circle. So there is a percentage share for south of I-20, and then there's a different percentage share for north of I-20.
Are we not getting the cart before the horse? We're doing a service delivery agreement before we see what the actual agreement is, or? I'm just asking kind of layman questions, to be honest. I don't know. This is kind of new to me, so I'm kind of learning as I go.
Sure, yeah, no problem, good question. So I would completely separate the revenue sharing agreement from the service delivery strategy. Those, to me, are completely separate things. We're trying to get the service delivery strategy in place so that we can better negotiate with the companies that are interested here. And when they come to us, we can say, yes, we can speak on behalf of sewer and water and all these things. And we can tell the state of Georgia, hey, state of Georgia, you can give us grants to help entice this company to come because we're in compliance with the service delivery strategy. We are the service provider for, the whole list of services. So this is really an economic development tool for us to use on the service delivery strategy side. The revenue sharing side, because we've already purchased land that's part of Social Circle, we need to get that in place as well. So that, again, when companies come in, we can negotiate tax abatements on behalf of Social Circle.
Thank you.
David, have you been in conversation with anyone from JDA concerning this?
I have not directly, but the gas authority and the other cities, I'm sure that, as was mentioned, we call it the Stanton Springs Natural Gas Operating Committee. I think is some folks say Tri-Cities, but again, that's Social Circle, Covington, and Madison. That was I think as the Joint Development Authority was a forward-thinking, very progressive move years ago for the cities to cooperate in the provision of natural gas instead of fighting over who had the territory. We worked that out, and we'll do the same thing for the next expansion. But we, as a matter of fact, we have a meeting tomorrow, and we'll talk about the land, we'll talk about the expansion, and anything else going forward. I had a quick question.
Yes, sir.
You talked about expansion. Does Stanton Springs to expand, does it have to be contiguous to the existing land, or could it jump a few parcels and expand? I'm just curious. I thought about everything has been contiguous so far, maybe split by highways or the interstate, but could this concept move 2 parcels over and do the same thing?
Sure, we could. We're not limited to any contiguous parcels. We're not even limited to which county we're in, as long as
So
we're
you
in
go
one
to
of the
Jasper
four
County,
counties.
since Jasper's a partner, theoretically.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and you have, so when you do expand, there's no zoning requirements that you have to go through? Because you have that authority to just?
No, we don't have zoning authority.
Okay.
We have passed zoning ordinances in all 3 counties that are exactly the same.
Yeah,
And so when we just, when we purchased this 665 acres, we went to Social Circle, they
Gotcha.
adopted our zoning ordinance, and it's zoned as Stanton Springs Business Park.
gotcha.
So as we buy the parcels, we have to get them.
But like when
rezoned.
you expand to Old Mill Road, because that's, that's historically some beautiful rural farmland. I mean, and again, no judgment, I'm just curious, how do you do that? Do you have to go through the planning at the county? So
Have to
you're
go
under,
through Morgan County to get it.
you're under
rezoned.
that, gotcha.
Thank you so much. Are you looking for a vote from this council tonight?
Yes, sir. Was hoping.
So it's back to our council member that no further questions for Ms. Bray.
Mr.
Yes.
Mayor, I guess, the only service city Madison is gas, right?
Right.
Right. and-
That,
and-
we're not into the water business or the sewer, just gas. isn't it?
But gas is
That's
not
right.
a part of this. Gas is not a service, since the city of Madison has all of Morgan County, other than a small piece in northern Morgan County that you remember we ceded to another city to serve a poultry farm.
Yes.
So natural gas is not a part of the service delivery strategy, the same way electricity and telecom and other things. These are local government services. The natural gas is being worked out at a different place. The city is involved in that, but that's not a part of this service delivery, as it has never been a part of service delivery within Morgan County.
So it's back to our council members for a vote. If you feel good about voting on this tonight, there was a lot of material to read in our attachment portion. Since we already connected to Staten Springs and the JDA, so I think it could be a win for our city. Mr. Nunn?
Yes, absolutely.
It's certainly been a great success for all of the counties that are involved in it, and hopefully, maybe when they redo the revenue sharing agreement, it might be even better for Morgan County. I would make a motion, Mr. Mayor, with your permission, to accept the updated delivery strategy, service delivery strategy as it relates to Stanton Springs North.
So moved.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, if none, the vote unanimously. Ms. Gray, thank you for coming.
Thank you
this
so
evening.
much.
Presenting that to us.
Do you have a business card?
Next on our agenda is a public hearing. Mr. Bryce, if you would come.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Bryce, proceed.
All right. I'm going to do a joint presentation on the first 2 items for the Planning Commission, from the Planning Commission. Specifically, in this instance, the reason is they're literally asking for the same thing for the same situation for adjacent properties, using the same site plan to show the situation for both properties. So it's just easiest to cover it in one. So just a reminder that you will need to ensure that things are done properly, we will have to have 2 public hearings and 2 votes. But this is, information affects both properties equally, which is why I'm trying to save time for everyone this way, with the mayor's permission.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
You're jumping down the
Yeah,
agenda.
you're B
You
and
need to take
C.
up nodal zoning first, I
My
think, just to
apologies,
keep everybody on the same page.
Well, thank you. All right, the nodal zoning.
Yes, sir.
All right, staff was directed by the mayor and council to consider an alternative means of calculating lot size for residential lots. And this came about after we've had several requests regarding lot size for the city. Staff took a few swings at it. You folks looked at it at a work session, and then we went back and did a few adjustments, minor and such. And then it went before the Historic Preservation Commission to get the recommendation, and it went before the Planning Commission. And both those bodies recommended against approval of this ordinance, draft of this ordinance. Let me explain basically how it's set up to work. But that's sort of the background. Public comment has been attached. So, staff took the idea of what we currently have, which is when you have a front setback and it's in a developed residential area, we look at it and we take the average, and that's kind of where your front is. And so we took that idea of doing a calculation based on an area. So to qualify potentially, the property needs to be within 300 feet of an intersection. It was a good way to provide a neutral, independent way of picking an area to define it. So it needs to be zoned R1, R2, because the R residential district is used as a buffer area between us and the county to the rural transition, and R4 already allows quarter lot size, so it would be pointless to have them under this because that meets the city minimum standard size. And then we look at it, the last thing to be possibly eligible, that there are properties with detached dwellings, and that's the key point, within 300 feet of that radius that have less than half an acre. Basically, we look and see, are there any places that have houses that are atypical in their lot size? And then we use that to calculate a median. So let me walk you through sort of a more detailed example after you sort of think of those standards. If you want, you can check out 4th Street and Hill Street, that map, if you want to follow along. But basically, we selected that intersection. We did a 300-foot calculated radius. And again, this is designed to simulate roughly a city block is about 300 feet. There are 20 properties wholly or within the radius. Then 12 of those have a detached dwelling. And again, we exclude undeveloped properties or other land uses. So then we move on. Of these 12, 7 properties, that is 12 properties that have a detached dwelling, 7 of them are less than half an acre, which means we're now looking at an atypical lot size that would be considered substandard for the R2 zoning standard. The median area of the 7 properties, then we take the median area, and it's greater than 0.25 acres. In this case, it's, I believe, 0.285, which means that's greater than 0.25, because obviously this would not allow someone to go less than a quarter acre, which is what we have established as our citywide minimum. Any residential development cannot exceed a unit per quarter acre, multifamily, detached, period. So, and then any lot split that would be possible has to meet all the other zoning standards. So lot coverage, lot width, frontage, all those apply. So in this case, it boiled down to that 2 additional lots, and you'll see a line marking them, and their hash could be created. You'll notice that those lines have to make sure they avoid the existing houses. And why this is important, even when in theory you can meet this lot size, and I'm going to show you another example briefly. If you go to Harris Street and College Drive, we actually have a standard that would actually allow for 0.349 acres if this was adopted, but given the location of the current houses, you can't, because you'd have to draw the line through the middle of the houses to make it work. Ergo, no new lots could be created in this situation, because you have to meet all the other zoning standards. That's basically it. It was designed as a way for anyone, staff, or an applicant could have a surveyor come in, provide the information, and proceed based on the area around it. So that's the intent. That was the result of the exercise and study you asked staff to produce. The Planning Commission and Historic Preservation Commission were worried about potential ripple effects. We've received a few comments from the public that were not in support of this particular text amendment. Again, they all generally fell on the same concern of the overall impact. I will say the Historic District, given its parameters, was concerned on its impact on the Historic District, which is their area of expertise and focus. And the Planning Commission was more generally concerned about its impact on the city as a whole, which is why they, again, recommended denial. So I hope I tried to explain, it's basically a calculation that the mayor and council, if they choose to adopt, would allow that, and if the mayor and council do not believe it is a tool that fits the city at this time, we'll just happily shelve the study and move on.
Thank you, Bryce, and we thank the staff for looking into this notice zone. It was something new for us as well, and we thank you for bringing this back to us tonight. Does any council member have any questions for Bryce? If you could just wait maybe until after our public hearing, if there will be questions tonight, we can come back to it.
Bryce, were there any comments outside the historic district? I mean, we're not only applying this to the historic districts for citywide. I didn't see any comments. Well, from planning and zoning, what was their concern outside the historic district for neighborhoods like Beacon Heights that do have smaller lots?
Well, a couple of things. Beacon Heights being R4, this wouldn't be an issue. You
Wouldn't
can
be an
argue
issue,
quarter
that's
acres.
right.
So all the R4 neighborhoods, this is irrelevant. But
Yeah.
raising the more general question, the planning commission did recognize the fact that they were concerned not just for the historic district, but they did agree with the Historic Preservation Commission about the potential impacts.
Gotcha.
But they were more general in their concern.
Yeah. So can I ask you another question? When with the Joshua Hill property, there's a big square there that's undeveloped. How would, if this nodal zoning were to pass, how would that impact that particular lot? Because it would meet these standards, I believe, with the zoning and the intersection.
Well, and I'm going to sound horrible. Give me the corner that's on.
That's
so I can
on,
work with it. Thank you. Unlike
It's
Monica,
on Academy.
I do
It's between Academy
addresses.
and Old Post, but I don't know what
I'm
the.
not sure if it has the small lots that you would need.
Yeah.
These are all large lots. This is not about drilling down. This is where larger lots and small lots are in the same area to be able to.
Well, it does, because Anna Merritt's lot, that house is small. I mean, there's some small lots I mean, if you're looking, I mean, you're saying that you have to have the mean of what's on that street, right?
You look at we use median lot size.
So you've got Lynn Treble's house, it's a small lot.
You're 1,000 feet when first one you mentioned to the other one you mentioned.
Not Anna Merritt's.
No.
Anyway.
Anna Merritt moved, she
Yeah, she had that, anyway.
did she have a house in a different location before?
It's right there on Old Post. I mean, on Academy. Anyway, but I don't, anyway.
Well,
Okay, maybe I'm thinking about the wrong.
a couple of things. Larger
And
lot.
maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, but I'm just asking, how would something like an undeveloped piece of property there? I'm trying to think of the worst, the worst case scenario if this were to.
There are a couple of things that would limit that. I'd have to look at the dimensions. I can't do that off the top of my head here, but they would still have to meet lot frontage, which can stop a lot of split. It will raise an issue for splits. So even if it's zoned R1 and is allowed a smaller lot size, they still have to meet all the other zoning aspects of R1, lot width, road frontage, and so forth. Then as well, there's the issue of whether or not there's an existing structure. Some have them, some don't. But that can also sort of, like I mentioned the example a moment ago, where we have an intersection where potentially you do have an alternative lot size, but the only way you can get there, you'd actually have to literally take down the existing house. It's just really not a very practical option. So that's one aspect. And it is possible, and also if a lot is big enough, for example, if it's zoned, I'm just going to use a hypothetical here, if it is at 1.5 acres and it's zoned R1, they can still split a lot off, regardless exactly right now. So at some point, there are some limits, and I'd have to look at it and crunch the numbers, so to speak, but I don't know the lot well enough to speak to that.
I think the fear that I've heard from some of the people that were against this was that backyards would be split off like they were so long ago. I'm trying to understand what the fear is of, like the unintended consequences of this passing.
Mr. Mayor, my question, Chris, would still have to have road frontage, right?
Yeah, I get that.
The backyard, they'd have to have double road frontage on that lot?
That's right.
Okay, I've just questioned that.
And this is just sort of the reason we have these lots here. It reflects the historic development pattern in Madison. I believe it was 0.33 acre minimum for a while. The city council, after a lengthy discussion, I believe it was in 2005, adopted adopted basically our current standards. And of course, that was a policy decision then, and before you folks tonight is another policy choice.
Okay. Thank you, Bryce. At this time, we're going to open the floor for our public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak against this text amendment? Please come forward and state your name.
There may be somebody might want to call in.
Anyone on Zoom that would like to speak against this text amendment?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
this is Beth Scott.
Yes.
Great, may I speak now?
Yes, ma'am, you can.
Thank you. This is Beth Scott. I live at 552 Plum Street in Madison. And I believe you all got a copy of the letter that I sent to Planning and Zoning that came into your packets. And so you know that I have stated my opposition to the zoning amendment. I listened carefully to the meetings that HPC had and Planning and Zoning had, and there were some very good points brought up about the unpredictable consequences of this change. And I just wanted to restate my opposition, and I also wanted to thank you for your consideration of the reports, the recommendations that came in from HPC and Planning and Zoning. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone else that would like to speak against it? Ms. Bessie?
Yeah.
Sure.
My name is Betsy Wagenhauser. I live at 962 Dixie Avenue in Madison. Just some of the comments I want to say. I do oppose it. I oppose it. I love the reasoning that the Historic Preservation Commission came up with. I like how they kind of laid it out, how they analyzed it. I think they did a great job, and I think they made some really good arguments against it. It was the same with the Planning Commission as well. Sort of the same things came out of it, and rather than going into detail and repeating what they said, I will say that I concur with their summaries of why we should not go for it. But basically, I liked what one individual said, and I can't remember who it was, that discussed that it was, you know, it could be a great instrument, but probably not for our town, and that what we're looking to do is address a couple of issues for our neighbors, which I think those do need to be addressed, but we're looking at a citywide overlay to address two small issues that some folks have. And I know, you know, not that our planning department should go back to the drawing board, but there must be another way that we can help our neighbors and help them possibly find a resolution to their issues without doing this citywide overlay that would, as you have stated, it may have some unintended consequences. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else that would like to speak against this text amendment? Is there anybody else on the on the phone anything?
There's no one on live streaming, so.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone here that would like to speak for this text amendment? If you would come forward and state your name, please, and where you live.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Dick Schmidt, and I represent a gentleman named Cade Cowan. I'm sorry, my address is, you want my personal address or the address of the person who we represent?
Probably your address. Wouldn't it be his address?
Can you use business address for the record? Would that be acceptable?
Sure. My address.
He's already signed in, so it's okay.
Okay, I've got it signed.
Okay.
So I represent Cade Cowan, and he is an individual who owns one permitted non-conforming lot upon which sit two non-conforming homes. One lot, two homes. Homes were built prior to the enactment of a zoning ordinance in the city of Madison. They were built on a lot that is currently zoned R1, and the lot is about a half an acre, a little over a half acre. He tried to subdivide that lot so he could sell the two homes to his two renters, and found that he could not do that. So we came to the city starting about 2 years ago trying to come up with a solution. And we tried several different things, but in the end, after coming both to P&Z and to this body, we agreed that it made sense for you to come up with an ordinance that would allow for a statutory method for you to deal with these types of situations. Your very able and expert zoning folks have created a proposed ordinance. And in very simple terms, the ordinance, I know he talked, Bryce talked about a little thing, but I'm going to make it in very clear, simple terms. It says that if within Madison you have an area that is largely developed into small lots, a property owner can elect to subdivide an existing lot into a smaller lot which conforms in size to all, not all, but many of the surrounding lots. In other words, it creates a method whereby you can allow for a subdivision of these lots in certain circumstances. It doesn't allow for the wholesale subdivision of new lots within R1 and R2 into tiny lots. It gives you a defined criteria. It takes away arbitrary decision-making, which is a concern by both zoning attorneys like me and y'all who would be defending those types of lawsuits. It gives you a clear, concise method to deal with these types of issues. And really what it does is it allows for lots to be created that are in conformity with the surrounding area. You can't just take an area of 1 acre lots and subdivide them into 1/4 acre lots. It has to be in an area that has other small lots. These are going to be in areas where conforming lots are atypical and non-conforming lots are typical. Right? So it's true that there were two general opinions that were put forward in opposition to this text amendment. But when you look at those opinions, the opposition was that there was uncertainty. It may cause a problem, but they did not spell out any specific clear problem. I see this as creating a solution, a way for you to have a clear, concise, and binding and not exactly litigation-proof, but litigation-resistant method for you to deal with these types of issues. There was another opposition that said it was likely to increase rather than reduce problematic situations. But I mean, that again is just a very broad, general opposition or a statement without giving any clear, concise reasons why this is a problem. So, in essence, you know, what I understood from you at this last meeting was that you wanted to help. You wanted a way to do this, but you wanted a way within your ordinance that you could allow, that would allow for you to help people that were in a genuine dilemma, and the zoning ordinance didn't provide for a way for you to do that, and this does. So it just provides you a framework to act in your reasonable discretion to authorize these types of splits for people who really need it. So we've been working on this for 2 years. I opened up this file about that long ago, and you know, there's 3 families that are waiting on something to happen at the city, and we would, you know, honestly and humbly request that you approve this ordinance and allow yourselves a way to deal with these things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Special comments. Is there anyone else here or on Zoom would like to speak for this particular text amendment? Again, Kansas, anyone on the phone, as far as you can see?
Nobody on live stream.
Nobody else is on Zoom. So this public hearing is closed. Is there no further comments from either side? So it's back, yes.
If you will allow some to speak against, I have a couple of comments to make.
Well,
There was some time remaining. I just didn't know.
yeah, but once the public hearing is closed,
Okay.
then I wish you had made your statements when you was, thank you so much. Are there any comments from my council?
Mr. Mayor, I have a few questions.
Sure.
If history, I mean, I'm going back to how this, I think there was another property owner on 4th Street that had a house that they wanted to move in another house at the time, and they had asked for a variance. If I remember correctly, comes from 2 variance requests we had on 4th Street, and we encouraged the planning department to look at nodal zoning to try to create a solution for those 2 property owners. So I don't know anywhere else in the city, and maybe Dick says there's other people in the city that have this same problem that Mr. Cowan has. I'm not sure where that is, and if we do know those problems, but I think this is a unicorn. I mean, I don't think this is a normal occurrence. But my concern with
Mr. Mayor, excuse me.
Yeah.
We need a motion and a second before we discuss.
Oh, I'm sorry.
One way or the other. That's all.
Well, if we could get a motion to
Either way, but as long as there's a motion and a second.
either approve or deny this text amendment.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, soon.
And then we get into the discussions before the motion is approved
Okay.
or disapproved.
Do you have any motion, Chris?
I move that we do not accept the text amendment.
I second the motion.
Are there any more discussion?
And I wanted to go back
Go
to
ahead, okay.
Mr. Cowan's issue, because from looking at this, and I think we directed planning to just address those 2 issues and maybe other areas in the city that would benefit. But then after looking at the pattern on Academy, which you look at, there are several houses there that have less than a 1/4 acre. So they could be argued, and maybe I'm wrong, but Lynn Treble's house and the other house are all 0.24, 0.25, and then you look at the next door neighbor, which is Boxwood, and so we're not even looking at the Joshua Hill lot, that somebody could argue that there's a pattern there that would, and maybe I'm wrong on this math, but I think that the historic preservation has it correct, and I think we need to follow them. However, I think that we need to figure out if there is a remedy, and I know that there might be one, and maybe Mr. Schmidt could advise if there is a remedy I think planning did offer some kind of solution that was mentioned in Beth Scott's letter that the owner said he was not interested in. If maybe there is a solution for them to make this mortgageable property, I think we should do whatever we can to help alleviate Mr. Cowan, because this is a burden. But the unintended consequences of doing this nodal zoning, in my opinion, could have lasting effects that we don't really understand going down the road. So.
Thank you, Chris. And just to remind our council too, we did ask our staff to look into this.
We did.
They are coming back, and I'm sure if there's any way that if this doesn't pass tonight, maybe Mr. Carper can come back, to our staff and find out what else he could do.
Yeah.
But we do know that all of us have received countless of letters opposing this text amendment to the historic district, because I think zoning, there's no zoning is probably new to all of us until we asked our staff to do some legwork for us. And we did ask our staff to bring back to us some feedback, and they did. And the planning commission, the board, as we know, voted unanimously to deny this text amendment because they thought it would be detrimental to our historic district. And they didn't want to open up a can of worms for future. So the ultimate vote is up to our council members, but I would just ask that you just pay attention to the concerning letters that we did receive, and hopefully if this doesn't pass from our council members tonight, maybe in the future, Mr. Cowan will come back to our staff and maybe see what else can be done.
There's got to be a solution that doesn't affect citywide. There's got to be something that we can do.
As a property owner, you would certainly hate you can't do anything with your property, but it still goes back to legal. It has to be done right, and all of us would want it to be done right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
There are practical solutions to this problem that we started with when the applicant first came forward, which was to split that lot, because houses are on each lot. That was built in 1968, and at that point in time, he could have split it, and he should have split it. That's a mistake that he made. He could have split it. It's 0.28 acres left for each one of those, which is at the lowest level. It's above 0.25. And that in itself would have only affected this lot. Now we do the note. I can see where people are coming from, but the problem is that the simplest solution would have been to split it, because each one of it has its own address, which is not right. You can't have two houses on one property with different addresses. It can be AB or AC. So the owner that built these built them for rentals. That's what he wanted to do. 1968. To me, the logical thing would have been to address it, split it, and move on and not affect anything else. But it takes compromise. It takes the people that are against it sit down and say, okay, we can compromise a little bit. And we have trouble getting that. So I don't want to vote for this, but I sure would like to have this applicant get an answer sooner rather than later. And I think we've done an injustice by just keep shoving it down the road. And my understanding is if we vote this down, they can't come back for another year.
But has he?
I believe, as I recall, that
This is not his zoning action.
Right.
Yeah.
This is not an individual.
No.
Did he find out what else he could do if this didn't pass tonight? Has he talked to staff about what other options?
Let's just, we're dancing around this thing.
Yeah.
All right, and we've danced a hole in the floor. You can ask for a variance on the lot size, or you can rezone it to something that the density fits. Monica, help me if I'm wrong about that. Because this council is very careful, and the city's very careful about bad variances. And this didn't start when this request came up. There was a lot split before this, when it was split off from the big house.
That's right.
And the city didn't sign off on that split either. Am I correct about that?
As far as I know.
As far as we know.
I will say that what you're dealing with tonight is an unintended consequence of a previous zoning action. I'll be very clear that the concerns over unintended consequences are real. But what you're dealing with is an unintended consequence of us tripling the zoning size. The citywide zoning in 2005 was still 0.18 for our small lots and 0.33 citywide for everything else at 0.33. And when Joanna Hayes was the planner with me that went through the whole city, and we analyzed every lot and did averages for every neighborhood, and we gave the council a whole map and several choices. There were 3 choices areas where we weren't real sure where it was going to go. One of those was the back of Marcy Miller's lot, and that was fun. We all remember that, right? One of those was around Porter Street and 3rd Street, because it was a historic area that the development pattern was small lots for early turn of the century African American dwellings. And then the other area where you've seen it is at Map and Whitehall and Pearl in that area, also subject to smaller lot sizes, and we raised the lot sizes. So everywhere we were more aggressive with raising the lot sizes are the areas where we've had, I'm going to call them bumps in the roads, or let's call them unintended consequences. And so this represents unintended consequence number 3 that y'all had to deal with. The first one was when Leon Peters came in and asked for relief to do a lot split on Map. This one, Mr. Cowan has asked for a lot split where he already has 2 dwellings on a street where we typically had smaller lots and smaller dwellings. Bryce, do you remember the 3rd one? There was a first one. Okay. Not to get lost down the rabbit hole, but what you're seeing tonight are the unintended consequences of a citywide rezoning in 2005. And so staff presented 3 areas where we thought you would have trouble, and we said, do you want to go 0.25 or do you want to go 0.5? And this was one of the areas that was lifted above the average lot size, which means it created more non-conforming lots than normal. So your city manager has, and what Bryce presented to you is a different policy shift, okay? So we don't really have a dog in this fight. We were just asked to give you an option. So your city manager has correctly summed up to you that you have 3 options. You can either look at a variance, and our concerns about variances are the variances can go citywide. It is a situation by situation relief scenario where the owner really cannot have created the hardship. So we are conservative, and David is correct. The second one is an R4 rezoning. Staff flat out discouraged the applicant from an R4 rezone because we see a total anathema interest in small lots, even if it reflects the historic pattern. And then 3 was an alternative standard, and we made up the word nodal because we were trying to describe how it geographically applied. So in your zoning ordinance, when we look at a developed street and you look at all the lots and you go, here are all the front setbacks, there's a common sense standard that is in the zoning chart that says if you take the average of them and the new lot is going to be the average. That way it doesn't hurt anybody around it.
And I'm going to interrupt you there for a minute. Even that has its problems because
absolutely, when
on East Avenue, remember the historic subdivision there, and you had to grant variance because
that's right.
the Go ahead.
There's no main standard and there's no substandard, the relief standard that cover 100% of the scenarios. They're never going to do that. Zoning is not a fail-safe. It does not cover everything. So I liked Bryce's solution because it seemed clean. R1 and RB, R1 and R2 reflect our R1A and our R1B areas where our lot sizes were smaller. He said, just like taking a city block and you average front setbacks, he took an intersection which keeps it fairly tight. That's a 1-block area. And he said, let's average lot sizes. Then to narrow it at your request, it only applies to lots where houses already exist, so people can't just use it to randomly split lots. I'm going to be very clear. We don't have another alternative suggestion for you. If you want to give them a relief in a different way, that's fine. You want to turn your head and plug your nose and do a variance, that's fine. But we don't really have another idea. This is our best solution. We've listened very hard. I hear the concerns about lot splits throughout the historic areas, whether they're in the historic district proper or whether they're in non-designated historic areas. We hear that concern. I don't have a better solution for you. If you have one, if one of the people who is fearful has one, we're open to redoing that. I don't know how you give the applicant relief. Mr. Jimmy might have one, but we tried to do it narrow, we tried to do it small, we tried to continue to chop it down, and I'm not advocating for it or against it. I'm just saying we've done our best effort to show, based on what's on the ground, a modest relief format. Like it, don't like it, shift policy, or say we want all the lots to be 0.5 and things to go away that aren't 0.5. Both of those are valid policies. Does that answer the question, David? Probably ad nauseum, I bet.
What was
Sorry.
the condominium solution that Beth referenced in her email? What was, or was that not a solution?
I think it,
I
I think it takes
somebody
the
would
land-
else would have to
I think it
speak
takes
to
the
that.
land out from under, I can't.
I can't speak to
And
that.
does that make it not mortgageable? I mean, that
I think it
ultimately.
complicates.
It has nothing to do with zoning. Ownership it has nothing to do with zoning.
Yeah.
It doesn't make a whole lot of difference, but we didn't direct the planning department to look into nodal zoning. We directed kind of the planning department to come up with a potential solution. I don't think any of us here at the table knew a darn thing about nodal zoning at that time.
There is no such thing as nodal zoning. That is a made-up term to describe
But I mean,
the standard.
we had no idea what a, quote, potential solution would be.
Well, you remember,
That's
I
right.
think the other side of the street, Mr. Newton had, you remember, he asked for a variance, and then Mr. Cowan asked for a variance. They were back-to-back variance asking, and there was a lot of neighborhood furor over those lot splits. Do you remember that? And so I
Yeah.
think this was kind of like, well, what can we do to give Mr. Cowan relief without having variances? And this was kind of something we directed them to look into, and obviously it's not as simple as
I mean, if
we
I
put,
could just,
it's
I
been
don't wanna-
unfair.
I don't want to add too much, just I want to reiterate the fact that what the mayor brought up. There has not been a single vote amongst our commissions to recommend this
Yeah.
solution.
Yeah.
Not one. And then I know a lot of concern about what it might mean. I look at the 4 examples that are here, and I see 6 new lots. And I don't understand how, if you were to extrapolate that out across the city, I mean, it really just undermines our existing zoning law so much in my mind. I mean, it just guts it. It's taking, where maybe a scalpel could be needed to give relief to Mr. Schmidt and his client, we're using a meat axe with this proposal in my mind. And I think some of the votes that we see kind of reflect that. I'm not recommending this, but my memory serves me is that I believe kind of under the wire, Mr. Schmidt pulled his
He did.
application before we took a vote. I don't know, very likely that leaves the door open for trying again without the waiting period. I'm not really recommending that, but this is not the option that I'm going to vote for. It doesn't sound like too many other people are in the council as well. It's just not the solution that is the surgical slice that we might need to do to help this gentleman here.
Are there any more comments from my council? If not, we have a vote on the table. All in favor, show of hands.
Okay, if you vote in favor, you're
All
saying
in
no.
favor?
Yes. Yeah, the motion was to deny the
To
application.
deny?
I just want to make sure.
All in favor? Opposes? All in favor to deny? All in favor?
Yeah. This
All in
was
favor?
one of those.
The question is, all in favor of the motion to deny? That's the vote.
All in favor of the vote to be denied? 1, 2, 3. Okay?
Oh, excuse me.
See,
Can we add a little bit of clarity on that, Mr. Mayor? I think I understand, I just want to make, and maybe I don't, but
To deny this text
the
amendment?
motion, sir, is to deny,
The zoning, the motion
The
is
nodal
to
zoning.
deny the zoning.
Text amendment.
The text amendment, nodal zone.
okay.
So what we're going to do is what Eric said, so that's what we're voting on, then, is to deny.
To deny the nodal zone and text amendment for this piece of property.
No, it's not for this. This is
For city.
For
citywide.
For citywide. All in favor? Opposes? Let the record show 4 in favor of the 9 and 1 for. Okay. Thank you so much. Mr. Bryce, it's you again.
Nice. Thank you. And this time I have the order I use. All right. Brief recap, this is the variance request. Both properties on Bell Circle, they're currently unaddressed, and they will require 2 separate public hearings and votes. Very briefly, the applicant is requesting this variance because currently the zoning ordinance, because this Bell Circle is a developed area, the average road frontage is about 50 feet for the build-to line for the front setback. You'll notice on the screen up there that the lake and its sort of feeding stream, if you will, actually are in the rear of this property, and Mr. Coker is kind enough to indicate that, indicating that if they went back that far, they would have certain hydrological challenges that would be uncomfortable to address beyond the need to stay at 25 feet outside of state waters. So the applicant is asking to go 20 feet, a variance in this case to allow for 20 feet, which is what would be required in R4 if this was an undeveloped lot. And their argument, and my understanding, is that they're wanting to put more housing into Beacon Heights because this is one of the more affordable areas we have in the city, and the hydrology is a long-standing issue. I will note that according to the state floodplain map and the proposed one that will be adopted hopefully soon by the state, that there are no floodplain issues here according to the state of Georgia previously or on the updated one. So that's not a point of the discussion in case anyone's wondering. Funny little quirk of hydrology according to the state of Georgia, FEMA, and GEMA. So just putting that out there, but even if there was, they're going further from the water, which would help out in that situation if that was a concern. We've received no comment from anyone for either property, for or against. Mr. Peaster spoke in favor of it, and he is online, so if he needs to add anything after this, Mr. Mayor, you'll know to keep an eye for that. Planning Commission gave both requests a unanimous recommendation given the hydrological conditions and the fact the applicant will be meeting the non-developed setback standard.
Thank you, Bryce. Our public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here who would like to speak against?
For the record, sir, you might need to specify which lot you're hearing first.
Public hearing, various topics on behalf of Ben Crow, I believe it's...
M23032 and M23033, sir. So whichever one you wish to start with first.
B, to build a line of 55 feet required in section 700.1, table 11, note 3 to 20 feet for tax parcel M23032, which fronts Bell Circle. Is there anyone here to speak against this variance? Nobody's on Zoom. Is anyone on the phone? Okay, no one is on the phone. Okay. Is there anyone here to speak for this variance? Todd, I believe you're for it. The variance. Mr. Peaster?
Yes, this is Todd Peaster with Georgia Civil, 311 North Main Street in Madison. I think Bryce described it very adequately. We feel like that the extenuating circumstances of the state water area in the back, prohibits this property from meeting the typical setback, but we are meeting the underlying zoning setback for the R4 zoning. And so we ask that because of these extenuating circumstances that this be approved.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else to speak for this variance? If not, it's back to our council for discussion.
Let's get a motion.
Get a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I vote to approve the zoning variance for lot number M23-032.
I'll second.
Is there more discussion?
Are these hash marks at the back of the lots, are they utility right-of-ways like power lines and sewer and all that stuff?
Sanitary sewer.
Pardon me?
Sanitary.
Then I do have one question. I don't know who it's to, and I don't, does the fact that the county tax assessor has rated both these lots as, quote, unbuildable, have anything to do with what we're doing tonight?
You know, I've looked at these lots, I've had builders look at these lots, and I think it was always assumed that the topography is exactly why we're doing the variance, is the topography is not conducive with the lake and the water. So this variance probably addresses it. I don't know why they have that on there.
Mr. Mayor, part of the reason they probably had it was because of the setbacks that we had on there to start with, which would push it back into the other area. The other thing is if you've been by there, you can see that from the pond or lake, that whatever you want to call it, it's a very steep incline, which definitely puts it out of the floodplain. I mean, the water would have to come up about 14 feet. I mean,
Yeah, this builder's being very creative, so, I mean, it's good. We need more housing, and Beacon Heights looks incredible with some of the new construction in there.
I mean, I don't disagree that houses would be good there and could be real good for the city and certainly for Beacon Heights. At the same time, it just kind of bothers me that, and it's probably, I mean, those lots were valued at $1,000 for tax purposes. And all of a sudden now, because of a decision we're making, they're no longer unbuildable. They're now buildable lots. And I will say, I believe the buyers paid a whole lot more than $1,000 for these two lots. So I'm probably getting in an area that doesn't really.
Were they even subdivided? I thought they went with that house, with that duplex.
They're part of the original subdivision.
They were, yeah.
So the county has, Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
So say again what you just said, Eric, because I was coughing a little bit. Coughing. I was, I'm sorry.
Basically, I just was kind of trying to get a little more information about this, and I saw that the county tax assessor has rated these two lots as, quote, unbuildable, and therefore they're valued at $1,000 each, and the property tax for this year and last year is $12 and change for each of the lots for the year. And I realize that's the county tax assessor, it's not the city of Madison, but there's something weird about that I am having a little hard time in my mind reconciling. We're now in one motion tonight, we're going to change that status to make it a buildable lot, and they can put a house on there, which I'm not necessarily opposed to, but it seems like it doesn't really match up, and I don't know.
Well, the lots in Beacon Heights, I mean, to give the county a fair, they're worth more than $1,000, but they were reselling about 4 years ago for $10,000. I mean, that all of a sudden there's been a lot of interest there, and if you drive through, you'll see. But that they probably weren't worth a whole lot.
Okay. And
I mean, they've been there forever, and nobody's wanted to purchase them. So.
And I do, an important fact is one that Bryce mentioned, that if it wasn't for the other few houses that are around there setting kind of the facade line farther back, that R4 would be a 20-foot setback.
That's right.
And that's what they're asking. So that that sort of mitigates my concerns.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead.
No, go ahead, let Monica go.
Monica.
I was just going to add that I think to some degree it's the terminology that's tangling us up there. I think that they use the word unbuildable. It's not unbuildable under zoning ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
It means undesirable for building purposes, for tax purposes, so therefore they can ascribe a lower tax. Often people will go in and say, hey, my topography sucks, I need you to call it unbuildable so that I'm not paying huge taxes on it. So unbuildable, the term they're using, is not a zoning term that's unbuildable for us.
Okay.
They're creative builders. These guys are, so they'll be good.
Councilmember Latham, you got to.
I was just going to say, I drove up and down the street, and there are houses on that Bell Circle that are 20 to 25 feet off the road frontage. So other people may have desired to build further back, which was no limitation on how far they built back, have a bigger front road, but to me, the 20-foot, it's pretty consistent with quite a few of the houses on Bell Circle.
That any more discussion? Okay, all in favor of this, approval of this variance, show of hands. Opposed is none, the vote unanimously. Thank you so much. Bryce?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Second public hearing.
Oh, we got to have a second.
Yeah, got to have another public hearing.
I heard you the first time. I think it's okay. Okay, I'm sorry, Brian.
Okay.
I thought we just had to have a separate vote.
I think to make it legitimate, you've got to go through the procedure for each parcel.
Have to still go through the procedure.
There
So,
are two applications, apparently.
I agree. Thank you, Jimmy.
well, the public hearing is open for those who would like to speak against it, this variance.
Well, do we have to have Bryce come up?
I don't think so.
You have
Okay.
to have,
They're pretty much
you
the
have to
same.
have a staff report, you have to have for and against, and then you vote.
So, Mr. Mayor,
no-
I think
no
that
other-
means Bryce needs to come up and give a staff report on this
To-
lot.
to-
I think
to
that's
go
what
through
Do
you,
we need to give a
procedure.
staff report on this again, Mr.?
That's what the procedure calls for, 11:45.
Same situation as we just discussed. If there's any additional questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Okay.
That's sufficient.
Back to our council. Public hearing is closed.
I
I
hate
it's
to
not.
be that
Get a
way, but
motion
if you
to
want
approve this
to.
variance, get a motion in a second, then we'll discuss it.
So moved.
Mr. Mayor, did we ever open the public hearing for lot number M23033?
Yes,
Yeah, that was just, what we just did. We didn't just call out the name.
it's a different parcel, you need a public hearing.
And we've not done that yet?
No.
So,
It may be the shortest, it may be the shortest public hearing we've ever had, but at the same time, if we're going to legitimately grant the variance.
I was under that impression.
okay.
So we need to open for public hearing.
So the public hearing is open
Yeah.
for
I'm not giving my comment.
section. For the M23033, which fronts Bell Circle. The public hearing is open against, is there anyone here to speak against? Anyone here to speak for it, besides Mr. Todd Peaster? If not, the public hearing is closed, it's back to our council for a vote.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the variance for lot number M23033 to a 20-foot setback.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed is none, vote unanimously. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
May I make one comment on our previous vote?
Sure.
Because people my council members might have been confused by what I said, because I was hesitant to vote for the nodule, that, but after Monica said, we're running out of solutions, I felt, how do we rectify this situation? You know, I would have loved to have said, maybe a discussion that us as a group will try to work with staff for something. I just, that's all I was saying, and I voted for it because of that reason.
Okay. So Monica, you're back?
I am. You're also under no obligation to provide relief, I'll just note. Okay, so tree ordinance tonight. Y'all have already heard it at the work session. I'm not going to go over it. I just will briefly say that it was presented 2 years ago. None of the context has changed. The council wanted to be reassured that it wouldn't be an onerous obligation on any of our extant lots that are currently housing wonderful trees or harboring wonderful trees. And so we provided 6 examples thanks to Ben Prue. And the recommendation from the Green Space Board is to approve it. And if you have any further questions after reflection on it for the last week or two, I'm happy to answer that.
We know in our past work session, Monica did come and discuss this tree ordinance to us, so if we can get a motion and a second to approve it tonight.
So moved.
Resolution.
Second.
Are there more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none. Vote unanimously. Thank you so much.
That was easy.
David, you got the airport.
Yeah, thank that commission for their work on this. I know it's been a long time.
That's been a long time.
Yeah.
Yes, let me get back to my, okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a agreement, this is with, between the city and Georgia Department of Transportation. This is for another project. You very recently approved a task order with Jacobs for the rehabilitation of the runway and the taxiway and a little connector apron there north of $150,000. This is the contract, the agreement with GDOT to fund that. It has draft on every page. They don't do much in paper anymore. They don't send a wad of paper to sign. This is all, the mayor is as he well knows, everything is electronic signatures now with GDOT. So I'll answer any questions. You'll see that they have attached a lot of the information that you've seen on the exhibits for the work to be done on the airport. It lays out all the steps and all the things that are going to be done by Jacobs. I'll answer any questions. In short, this is how we get our money for this project.
So David, under Article 8, their compensation, am I reading that right? Is this going to be no money for the city of Madison?
What do you mean, no money for the city of Madison?
Well, it looks like the totals, $179,000 project, is that right? And we're looking at they've got listings of two payments, one from the state and one from the feds, I guess, and it totals over the one.
I'm not certain. This may be a not to exceed type of thing, but I'm not certain about that.
Well, if you go to section 12, is it, compensation?
Yes.
Article 8, I'm sorry, Article 8. Does those number 1 and 2, well, number 3, it says the sponsor's local share is 0. Is it, are we the local sponsor?
We are the local sponsor. So
I'm liking 0.
Yeah, I'm liking that as well. It may work out to that, maybe we'll hold them to that. So this is even better, we need to pass it quicker.
Works for me.
There are no more questions for David. Can we get a motion to approve this contract?
Mr. Mayor, what is the total cost of the project? Is it 179?
It's 179. It's going to be
Okay.
in that neighborhood. It could be a little bit different. All this is based on reimbursement.
That's okay. It basically said they were only obligated to pay 179, and if it was going to cost more, I couldn't find the cost for the project.
No, because this is not the contract to do the work. This is the contract to pay for the work. It just lays out the conditions that we have to do. And that was
3 takes care of that, David. It says 0.
0. That's perfect.
That's good.
We get a motion to approve this contract,
So moved.
Second.
There any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none. Vote unanimously. Okay, donation of land, deed of gift. I think we talked about that in our work.
Is that from Ken? Is that from you?
It's from Ken, because
Okay,
Ken
we're talking
owns it,
about
not
work
Monica.
session.
The Green Space Board is recommended, and Mr. Coker did a presentation to donate a tract of land, which is M18037B, to the city. It would adjoin President's Park and Trail. It is approximately .294 acres. Staff can confirm that we gave the title work to the attorney. I have confirmed that the taxes have already been paid on the property, so that you would not be assuming taxes. And this is one of those interesting one, Eric. It's divided off, so under the zoning ordinance, it's actually not buildable. But they have it assessed at $46,000. So how about that?
Oh, wow.
Anyway, so as you discussed at your meeting, the recommendation, I'm not sure Ken knew that. But anyway, I can confirm the taxes have been paid. I can confirm that we have a survey of the property, and I can confirm that the attorneys has received the title and the deed of gift. It may need to be reviewed for final form by the attorney, but I think it's good to go if it's still in your will to accept that property.
Well, we certainly appreciate the gift.
Yeah, thank you.
We
Thank
always
Ken. He
appreciate it.
volunteered.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Appreciate the
Is
gift.
the goal to bring that property, which is kind of on the side of the President's Trail, is it to bring the vegetation back to a more
Let's get
natural
this motion
state?
through it. then.
It is, the Green Space Board's intention
You
is
need a
to...
motion to accept.
That now, I might not stand up.
Need a resolution.
Okay, we can get
I
a
got,
motion
so,
to approve this donation.
so
This
moved.
gift.
Yes.
Got a
Second.
motion? Second. Any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimous. Thank you so much.
Mr.
Thanks
Mayor,
again.
can I answer Mr. Joyce's question? His
Yeah.
question was, is the intention to bring the vegetation back to a more natural state? And the answer is the Green Space Board's intention is to do more vegetation, but also retention of any space adjacent to that creek to continue to improve the water quality along that section of, it's a horse branch tributary.
Which means more than just the grass that's presently there.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Monica. Thanks, Ken. Resolution franchise fees for hosts of cable and video franchises. That you, David?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a simple resolution that will be applicable to anyone who applies for and receives a cable and video franchise by the state of Georgia. You may know franchises are awarded on a statewide basis. We got a letter from and I can't remember exactly what the wording was, but, and Karen will have to remind me of the company that was providing that they wish to do business in the city. We don't know exactly how or why they will do what they do in the city. This resolution simply says that we'll charge them 5% of gross if they choose to do business here. And that makes that applicable to anyone that has a statewide franchise for cable and video. I'll answer any questions. This is a one-pager.
Is that a GMA recommended
Yes.
percentage?
Yes. This is a GMA, we went through, this is part of our participation in the telecommunications service that GMA does. They help me with tower leases, or they help answer questions from people worrying me about wanting to buy out our leases, and they also, I think and I predict that this whole business is going to get really crazy in the coming, with all the money that's being thrown at broadband in rural areas, but also in cities. People are going to have more options, which is good, but we're going to have a lot of fly-by-nights and a lot of people throwing up trial balloons and a lot of confusion. And the city is going to have to try to manage what it does and on its properties and who's here and what they're doing and whether they're doing a good job within the city, as much as we can legally.
Okay, thank you. Can we get a motion to approve this resolution for franchise fees?
Yeah, Mayor, I would move to approve the resolution to establish franchise fees for cable and video franchises in the city of Madison.
Who needs to sign this? It says clerk, huh?
Mayor and clerk.
Mayor and
So we're basically giving you permission to sign this?
Yeah.
Can we
Okay.
get a second?
Second?
Second. All in favor? Any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimously. Thank you so much. COVID safety protocols, we talked about that briefly in our work session, I believe, the other week. And we were wondering about employees wearing masks in City Hall. They would want to dismantle masks, and I would suggest that to our council that we take the restriction off of masks and just strongly encourage. If you're coming into City Hall, we just strongly encourage that you wear a mask inside of City Hall, but it just will not be mandatory. And if our city employees don't feel safe, they can certainly wear their mask, and the other persons don't wear theirs. They can't make them put the mask on, but let's just take the mandate off of it and just follow protocol.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I make the motion that we remove the COVID restriction
Second.
protocols.
Are there any more discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
may I say, Ken, are we lined up on anything, is there anything else that's out there that we need to pull back, or Ken's our traffic cop on these things, he keeps up with?
So I think I'm right in that you'll recall, I don't even remember when you did this, but the mask mandates for businesses, and they could opt out by putting a sign. As near as I could tell, there was no sunset on that. So it is still, what the council was depending on was you put in a certain number of 100 cases per 100,000. And the idea was, when all that went down, you wouldn't have to rescind it. It would just automatic. It's only applies when it's that high. Morgan County's still that high, so technically that's in effect.
Okay.
If we were to lift the emergency order of Mayor Perriman, which I believe was in August, would that change that section of it that you just referred to?
I'm going to depend on our city attorney for that one.
I'll have to go back, I haven't looked at the, excuse me. I haven't looked at the old ordinance, but it had a sunset in it. I don't know whether it's already set or not. Ken, you might.
Well, the one for businesses was depending on the cases per 100,000.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so
it was a
technically-
sliding scale.
Right, so
So
technically it's in effect right now because we're
Right.
over 100.
Right.
Well,
So,
before,
but-
I'm sorry. go ahead.
So I was just, where would that diminish then, if it's still in effect right now, Mr. Carter?
Yeah, this ordinance here, if you either want to rescind the other ordinance or leave the sliding scale like it is so that it goes up or down, then there's no need to do anything.
Would it be best to leave it alone? That way a business would have the option to require? It would give them the backbone of the city if the case count was still high, and there may be businesses out there still doing that.
Right.
So
and
it wouldn't
they-
hurt anything to leave it alone, because they still have the option.
Right, and we still have that ridiculous 1-inch high sign that you can put on that says if you come in here without a mask, you don't have any liability. Of course, you didn't have any liability anyway, but.
Okay.
So,
Everybody's got that sign.
right. So it
Okay.
does give them the option of opting out.
Thank you.
Could I get a little bit of clarification over here? I'm sorry. So are we voting on the one that you did in August to rescind that for just City Hall and city buildings? Because that didn't have, I didn't think that had anything to
Well,
do with
right now,
business.
it's sort of mandatory for people to wear their masks
Right.
inside City Hall.
But
and
that's what we're-
inside our city
Right,
business.
that's a different issue there,
Right.
yeah.
And we're just taking that mandate off.
Right.
To the council. First motion has died, so we need to go back and make another motion to take the mandate off of
City buildings.
coming into City Hall and coming to our council. They just make it, we can encourage it, but we can't make, put a mask on. So we get a motion for that, to that effect, please.
So moved.
Second.
There any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, is none, vote unanimously. And we encourage our city employees, if you don't feel safe with someone coming into City Hall to your office, put your mask on and encourage them to do so, but you can't make them. I know you have masks available for them, so we appreciate you.
And Mr. Mayor, related to all that, does that mean that we can give Main Street and the people involved with some of our city activities, give them assurance that there will be no more cancellations of city-sponsored events, at least through the end of this calendar year?
We just don't know. The cases may all of a sudden fly high, so let's just sort of keep it on a low scale until we get there. We do know the parade is scheduled for the second Saturday in December. We're gonna have lots of people downtown. So if it doesn't flare up again, I wouldn't want them to say everything is okay. Let's just sort of take it maybe event by event and see how it works out, things goes. Because the only thing we have left this year is the parade, is that right, Ms. Robinson?
No.
We're currently in.
I know without sip and shop.
more.
Yeah, sip and shop, you know, did anybody have masks on much Saturday? Did you notice when they were sipping and shopping?
It was about half and half.
Half and half, so
Yes, sir.
a lot of people still wants to be safe. That's why I just say that, leave it at their own discretion, you know, and we won't just say all city folks you have to wear or don't wear a mask, you know, let's just wait to see what happens. Okay, thank you. Anything else that you was gonna say to us, Ken?
Actually, you just read the agenda, I'm up to the next one.
Oh, that's right, public service appointment. Go ahead.
Ken set up too early. They got roped into this conversation.
Did you get that quote, Secretary?
I would have called on you had you been sitting back in your corner behind the podium. I would have called on you anyway.
Okay, go ahead for the public service appointment for Public Arts Commission. I think we have one candidate.
Yes, sir. This has been a vacant position. We didn't have enough to fill all the positions, and Teresa Bramblett Reeves has applied to be on the board, and she's a fairly new resident of Madison. You have her application. I think she'll be a great addition. She attended the last meeting, and she's got skills.
She's
I
awesome.
think she's got a few skills,
Yeah,
Mr.
she's
Mayor.
Skills.
She's really she's talented artist herself. So
Looks like she's willing and ready to go to work. So let's
she's
put her
a
to
great
work.
addition to the city,
Is this your
regardless.
neighbor? Yeah.
Yes, she is.
Let's put her to work.
She had me at Goat Farm.
So if we could get a motion and second to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any more discussion? All in favor of Ms. Teresa Bramlett, served on our commission? Opposed, none, vote unanimously. Are there any comments from the public?
Mr. Mayor, I had a quick question, and I've wondered this. We've had live stream meetings for quite some time, even just before the pandemic. But through the pandemic and through all of that and closed meetings and partially open meetings, we've continued to allow people to participate via technology. At what point will we not allow that and require people to come in or either submit their comments in writing? There has to be a definitive point in time, because I think we had meetings, we had people tonight, 2 people commented on a zoning public hearing. Mr. City Attorney, what is the proper time to do that? Our meetings now are open. We're socially distanced. We're not closing the meetings anymore. At what?
As long as they're streaming, it's discretionary. If somebody wants to come, if they're, if there's no objection to the city council to having people attend remotely.
The only thing that concerns me is one thing, not for somebody not to be able to observe and to listen by live streaming, but if there's a technological problem and they have a real problem with a zoning hearing or something and they're not able to, then they're going to object on that. At what point can we get closer back to the old days when you had to be here unless there were real extenuating circumstances?
Well, let me just say this, the courts have opened for in-person court attendance. The judges still will allow people to come in and remote on calendar calls and motions, stuff like that. But when you do go in to a jury trial, they still have a certain amount of protocol like spacing and that sort of stuff, so. But I would say that if the city mayor and the council wanted to resume all in person, that's perfectly permissible. If there's an excess of people for the chairs, you can still, in a courtroom even now, in the courthouses, if they have a calendar call or something, they have the chair space, they have certain block off. So I think that from a legal standpoint, with those precautions, if you want to open it up to live all the time, then.
And what we could probably say, Attorney, is once they get the chair set in here.
The chair spaced
how many
out,
will
yes.
Will be able to attend the meetings in this public session.
Right.
It's 50, you know, the first 50 or the first 40, you know.
Mr.
first
Mayor,
35, yeah.
I was gonna say, if you look the way they're spaced now, and I'm not saying that couldn't be changed somewhat if we move back to the dais and there's more room, but
Right.
there are a dozen chairs in here right now at 6 feet approximately.
Yeah, you could,
You could outgrow that pretty quickly on a, but I think your point's well taken and made that we need to.
yeah, if the mayor and council go back up to the dais, it's,
But when technology and when live streaming, whether it's Boxcast or whether it's the other can't remember what do we use, GoToMeeting or? GoToMeeting. It wasn't really contemplated that a person could call in and participate via that, you know, that's different with COVID. That was different. So I understand that you can do it, but at some point, would you choose not to do that?
oh yeah, you can certainly choose not to do it.
You know, I think my sense is it's kind of gone a little bit from accommodating people who are afraid of COVID to a little bit more of a question of convenience now. And it's more convenient to stay at home and turn off your camera and join a meeting than it is to show up here. And maybe that's not the point of what we're trying to do.
Yeah, but I think people probably enjoy staying home and not having to come in public, you know?
Well, and people can still wear a mask when they come in.
We'd like to be able to stay home.
Walk right into that one.
I know where your staff stands.
Just saying, it's safe enough for us to be here, it's safe enough for them to be here. That's exactly right.
Are there any public comments?
There's nobody on either platform.
Nobody's on, okay.
Ms. Wagenhauser has something to say.
Right, absolutely right. But I just have one comment that I'd like to make tonight, and personally, I would like to congratulate our Dow Street Director, Ms. Karen Robinson.
Oh, yeah.
On her book signing on yesterday. She had a great turnout, and she was very well received from the community and her sorority sisters,
Well, and
her church family. And if you have not read the book, it's a good book to read.
Has it got any pictures in it?
Well, it's
well, and
She's
this,
written one, but I like to read it.
but congratulations.
and the weekend was success around town. Shop, sip, and stroll. There were people all over downtown.
So you want to give us a report on that, Ms. Main Street Director?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for those kind words. I wasn't expecting that on my professional platform, but thank you so much for that. Back to Shop, Sip, and Stroll, I do think it was a great first evening or day kickoff to our largest retail event. I will say that I did hear from a merchant today who said that although they thought that foot traffic was low for the same time last year as this past Saturday, their sales were double the sales this past Saturday than they were a year ago, and that was huge.
That's because they came to Madison Realty and got champagne.
Oh, is that what?
They were sipping a lot, and I sent them. I helped you there.
Well,
dear.
thank you. Thank you so much. So I thought that that was quite interesting, that the traffic was not as large, but that the sales were doubled for this particular merchant. So to me, that was a win.
That's more for volume than it was for rising prices.
Right.
I mean,
Right.
people.
Well, I think it was a win for our city either way, so we're excited
We're gonna take it. Yeah.
to push social media and doing live videos. We had Santa in downtown on Saturday, and I think that that was a hit, taking him into a lot of the merchant stores, and we'll be doing that again on the 20th, and having live entertainment, a nice variety of entertainment to kick off the holidays. We'll be lighting the downtown on the 19th of November. So we do have a couple of merchants who are super excited, who've already started lighting up the downtown. I'm exhausted only being a year old already, telling people to stop doing certain things. But anyway, it's all in the holiday spirit,
All the
so
holiday spirit, there you go.
happy
You
to.
also competed with a UGA game.
Absolutely.
At noon, where I was doing my civic duty, otherwise I would have been.
Well, no worries, totally understand.
I'll
Thank
be
you.
there
You
this
have 2
Saturday.
more Saturdays,
Yeah.
and then Shop Small Saturday on November the 27th.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that report. We're going to need a motion and a second to go into executive session to discuss personnel. And I'm not sure if the news media is listening tonight, but we probably will have, our meeting up once we come back, and just have one more item our council will need to vote on in open session.
Mr. Mayor, I move we leave regular session and go into executive session
To discuss personnel.
to discuss personnel.
Right.
Second.
All in favor, show of hands. Opposed is none, vote unanimous. If you need to take a quick break before we go into executive session, please do so.
We're going to talk about I think we're going to talk about. I'm ready right now.
Okay.
We don't have anything on the agenda for
For what?
I don't know what y'all